As discussions continue, one reality becomes increasingly clear. Influence within the monarchy flows from function. Without defined roles, authority diminishes naturally, not through hostility, but through irrelevance. That shift can be subtle, almost invisible, until suddenly it's complete. And this is perhaps the most misunderstood element of the entire situation. If change comes, it won't feel like a battle. It will feel like silence, like the closing of doors that were left open too long. Media dynamics have also played a major role in shaping this entire narrative. Over the last several years, coverage of Harry and Meghan has followed a predictable cycle: anticipation, revelation, backlash, defense, repeat. Each new interview, book excerpt, or documentary teaser reignites debate, but rarely moves the conversation forward. Analysts increasingly describe this pattern as diminishing returns. The more often the same grievances are revisited, the less impact they carry. This is where the idea of media fatigue becomes crucial. Audiences are not necessarily rejecting Harry and Meghan outright. Rather, many appear worn down by repetition. What once felt revelatory now feels familiar. And in a media ecosystem driven by novelty, familiarity is a slow form of decline. Without fresh angles or new substance, public interest naturally drifts elsewhere. By contrast, the monarchy's power has always rested in its ability to outlast attention cycles. Kings and queens are not influencers. They do not rely on virality. Their authority comes from continuity, the sense that the institution remains while personalities change. This structural advantage allows the royal family to wait out storms rather than confront them head-on. Prince William's strategy, according to royal watchers, reflects this understanding. Rather than responding to each provocation or public claim, the palace appears to be letting time do the work. Silence in this context is not weakness, it's insulation. Every unanswered allegation reinforces the monarchy's position as an enduring structure rather than a reactive participant. There is also a growing discussion around credibility. When stories emerge repeatedly from one side of a fractured relationship, audiences begin to ask what's missing. Perspective matters, complexity matters, and over time, one-dimensional narratives lose persuasive power. This doesn't invalidate personal experiences, it does change how they are received. Another factor shaping the future is generational expectation. Younger audiences tend to value transparency, but they also value consistency. They're less impressed by inherited status alone, yet equally skeptical of celebrity grievance culture. This creates an interesting tension. Respect must be earned either through service or substance. Titles without function hold limited appeal in this environment. From that perspective, redefining royal roles isn't about clinging to tradition, it's about aligning with modern sensibilities. A smaller, more accountable monarchy resonates more strongly with contemporary values. Fewer representatives, clear duties, visible impact. These principles are often cited by supporters of reform. This is why many observers believe the Sussex chapter is approaching a natural conclusion rather than a dramatic rupture, not because of punishment, not because of exile, but because the hybrid model, half in, half out, was never sustainable long-term. Institutions eventually reject ambiguity. If remaining royal associations are reduced or formally clarified in the coming years, the effect on Harry and Meghan's public presence would be gradual, not immediate. Influence doesn't disappear overnight, it fades as context shifts, as new voices emerge, as public attention moves on. This process is subtle but decisive. Culturally, this moment also raises broader questions about celebrity, entitlement, and legacy. What happens when inherited visibility collides with personal branding? How long can identity remain tethered to a past role? At what point does independence require true separation? These are questions far larger than one family, and perhaps that's why this story continues to resonate globally. For Prince William, the stakes are clear. As the future king, his responsibility is not to individual narratives, but to the survival of the institution itself. Every monarchy that collapsed did so not from external attack, but from internal inconsistency. History is full of examples where blurred authority weakened the core. Those who support William's approach argue that clarity now prevents crisis later, that boundaries protect relationships rather than destroy them, and that sometimes the most compassionate decision is the most definitive one. Of course, none of this erases the human element. Estranged families carry wounds that institutions cannot heal. Royal status does not grant immunity from pain, regret, or misunderstanding, but it does impose responsibility, especially on those who remain within the structure. As the years progress, the public may come to see this period not as a scandal, but as a transition, a moment when the monarchy recalibrated to meet a changing world, when excess noise gave way to quieter purpose, when spectacle was replaced by structure. So if 2026 does become a marker, it likely won't arrive with headlines screaming betrayal or triumph. It will arrive with paperwork, with protocol, with subtle shifts that only become obvious in hindsight. And perhaps that's the most fitting outcome of all. Not a royal war, but a royal resolution. Not winners and losers, but alignment and separation. Not drama, but definition. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you think the monarchy needs firmer boundaries to survive in the modern era? Or do you believe this approach risks closing doors that should remain open? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you follow royal developments closely, make sure you're subscribed for future updates. To fully understand why this moment feels different, you have to look beyond headlines and into how the monarchy actually operates. The British royal family has survived wars, abdications, scandals, and global revolutions, not by reacting emotionally, but by adapting quietly. That's why so many royal analysts are paying close attention to Prince William's approach. It's not loud, it's not impulsive, and that's precisely what makes it powerful. For years, Prince William has been described as cautious, even reserved. But those close to royal operations say that restraint should never be confused with indecision. On the contrary, William's reputation within palace circles is that of a long-term thinker, someone who studies patterns, absorbs lessons from past mistakes, and plans several moves ahead. This is why commentators believe the current situation surrounding Harry and Meghan is being handled with deliberate patience rather than confrontation. After stepping back from royal duties, Harry and Meghan made it clear that they wanted autonomy. That message resonated strongly with international audiences, particularly in the United States, where independence and self-definition are highly valued. However, over time, critics argue that the line between independence and continued reliance on royal association became increasingly blurred. Projects meant to establish a separate identity often circled back to royal experiences, royal grievances, and royal symbolism. This is where frustration began to grow, not just among traditional monarchists, but among neutral observers as well. The question repeatedly asked was simple: can someone truly leave an institution while still defining themselves through it? That unresolved contradiction has been at the heart of public debate for years. Royal historians point out that previous generations faced similar dilemmas. When members stepped away from duty, the separation was typically absolute. Titles faded into formality, public roles disappeared, and attention moved on. What made the Sussex situation unique was the ongoing visibility combined with continued reference to royal status. This hybrid existence created confusion both for the public and, reportedly, within palace structures. Prince William's concern, according to commentators, isn't about personal disagreement, it's about precedent. If one set of rules applies to some family members and not others, the institution itself begins to lose coherence. Monarchies rely on consistency. Without it, public trust erodes slowly but steadily. Another factor fueling speculation is timing. By the mid-2020s, Prince William will be assuming far greater responsibility, both formally and informally. As King Charles continues to redefine a modern monarchy, William is widely expected to play a central role in shaping what comes next. Analysts suggest that this transitional phase makes unresolved ambiguities increasingly untenable. This is why 2026 is frequently mentioned, not as a deadline, but as a natural checkpoint, a moment when structural clarity may become unavoidable. No dramatic announcements, no public ultimatums, just administrative alignment between role and representation. Public reaction to this possibility has been telling. Across social media, comment sections, and opinion columns, there's a noticeable shift away from outrage and toward acceptance. Many viewers express exhaustion rather than anger. The sense isn't that anyone wants punishment, it's that people want closure. Supporters of a streamlined monarchy argue that the institution functions best when its representatives are clearly defined, fewer working royals, clear expectations, and minimal overlap between duty and personal brand building. In this framework, boundaries are not punitive, they are protective. Prince William's supporters often highlight his focus on continuity. From environmental initiatives to mental health advocacy, his projects are designed to endure beyond news cycles. That same philosophy appears to be guiding his approach to internal family matters. Short-term noise matters less than long-term stability. And then there's Catherine, Princess of Wales. Her public presence has reinforced an image of composure and quiet resilience. Even during periods of intense scrutiny and personal challenge, she has maintained a consistent commitment to public service. For many observers, this steadiness contrasts sharply with the volatility that has surrounded the Sussex narrative. None of this negates the emotional complexity of family estrangement. Royal experts frequently emphasize that personal pain can coexist with institutional responsibility. The crown has always demanded sacrifice, sometimes at great personal cost. William, by most accounts, accepts that burden without illusion.